Okay, let's get started. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining for today's session on a dynamic approval system in SharePoint. We are going to go ahead and begin. I'm Will Cooper. I'm a SharePoint solutions developer, and I'll give you a little bit about my background. I do SharePoint consulting. I work with lots of different companies to help build SharePoint solutions. And I work closely with the InfoWise team as their training coordinator. And I do newsletters and write training material and do lots of stuff for them. I've been using InfoWise and Ultimate Forms for more than 10 years now. It has allowed me to be very successful in building SharePoint solutions, and that's some of what I want to show you today. To tell you about our business and product, we're all about making things simple and easy to work with. This is a no-code platform. You do not have to be a SharePoint developer or programmer or anything like that. It's simple configuration done directly in the SharePoint user interface. These tools are comprehensive solution tools that allow you to do a wide range of functionality in SharePoint, and I'll show you how that fits into our presentation today. This is all done in the SharePoint interface. To tell you a little bit more about myself, I run a SharePoint YouTube channel called SharePoint Smart. I post videos on there on a weekly basis, which give instruction and information about how to do cool things in SharePoint. So I do hope you check that out. Additionally, after our Ultimate Forms presentation, I'm going to do another additional presentation about SharePoint Dashboards.com. This is a user interface tool that allows you to format views and columns in SharePoint to make them visually appealing. So if you can stick around, there's more content for you after we get through the main presentation. We are going to do a drawing for a free InfoWise Ultimate Forms shirt, an embroidered shirt. That'll be at the end of the Ultimate Forms presentation. That is for people who are in the United States only. We need to do that because of shipping costs. Some ground rules. We do want your input and questions, and we do want to interact with you. Because of the amount of people in the session, the best way to make that happen is through the questions interface and go to webinar. So please do post your questions there, and we will get to them, if not right away. So just hang on if you don't get a response to that immediately. We are recording this session, and this will be posted later today on YouTube. And a really good thing to know is the approvals template that I show you today will be free and available for you to download after the session directly through our Ultimate Forms interface. So everything I show you today, you can download and install in your SharePoint environment today. And you would do that along with the free trial of our software. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. What I'm showing today is in SharePoint Online, but our tools are compatible and all the functionality works also for on-premise SharePoint. So regardless of which type of SharePoint you use, you can take advantage of what I show in the presentation. This is how I think of SharePoint out of the box. It's a bit limited. There's functionality that I need and want to do that just is not in SharePoint, especially custom forms development, automatic email notifications, dashboard customizations, things like that. It's a bit bare bones. This is how I think of Ultimate Forms. I think of it as a big toolbox, a workbench, if you will, that has all the tools that I need to build out solutions and get the functionality I want. So this is what you're doing by tapping into these extra tools. You're really providing yourself a complete platform and the ability to do anything that you want. All right, so let's focus now on the concept of approvals. This is a very common and repeating scenario in SharePoint. In fact, in the many years I've done SharePoint consulting, I think this is the #1 type of system that I have requested to build. So this is widely applicable. We're going to look at 10 key concepts, things that should be a part of any type of approval system that you have in SharePoint. We certainly want to have easy to understand dashboards. Seems like it would be obvious, but unfortunately, in many cases in SharePoint, the list views are dull and uninteresting. There should be visual indication and it should be easy to understand. We don't want everything to blend together. So this kind of shows you an easy to understand dashboard, which we'll look at very soon. So of course we want to know how many approvals have been done, whether things have been approved or declined, history, things like that. Very important to have a good dashboard. The form itself should also be simple and easy to understand. This is showing one approval section, and hopefully you would agree this is very clear. You have a signature box, and then it's immediately obvious what somebody does to approve or decline in this situation. And then there's a notes field. We want to be able to facilitate dynamic characteristics in the approval process. That is to say, in most approvals, there may need to be only 1 or 2 approvers in some scenarios, but more, as many as 4 or more, depending on other things, maybe the dollar amount for a purchase order approval. We want the number of approvers to be able to be dynamic in our system. We want this system to do tracking. In many cases, when you're dealing with SharePoint lists, you're seeing the current state in terms of the information for that list record, but you don't have the history in terms of what came before. Certainly in an approval process, we need to have that history. We need to know when the last approval took place, who made those updates, and in that way it helps us see things such as when an approval is stalled or somebody needs to do a follow-up. When we want our system to do that for us automatically, we don't want to have to do that manually. So this is showing some history logging that's a part of the system that I'll demonstrate. Field level security is important. And this just means that in an approval process, I need to ensure that only that approver is the one making that update. In other words, I can't do an approval on behalf of somebody else. We need to control that and know with confidence that the people who've been designated as approvers are actually the ones doing the approval. So we'll look at how field level security works in the form. Email notifications are certainly critical. We'll be looking at a sequential approval process. And when somebody approves, of course, we need to make sure the next person in line is aware of that so that they can then go in and do their approval. So those notifications are of particular importance. And then we want to control that sequence. We want to make sure that if you have a chain of 4 approvers and it is sequential approval, that only the first approver can approve and that nobody else is doing their approvals prematurely. So basically it follows one right after the other and we can keep control of that sequence. We need to be able to block changes to what's being approved. As you can imagine, that would be a problem if you have a system where, using the purchase order example, I put an approval in for $2,000. The approval process kicks off, and then in the middle of the process, I go in and I change it to $20,000 to be approved. So you have to be able to lock down what's being approved during the approval cycle. And so we need the ability to do that. Very often, approvals get stalled. It's one of the most common problems, something that you almost always fight against in approval systems. And so we need to give the user the ability to deal with that situation. We want them to be able to prompt those approvers when things do get stalled. So we want to have a button in the form as you see here. We want to give instructions to make it very clear what the process is right in the form. This is what I call baked in instructions. And you can do this in a way that stands out in your form using a snippet. And I'll show you. It's called a fragment actually in our tool. So that's a very critical thing. Whatever the rules are for approval, and you can see in the green box, we have some rules about how many approvers there are depending on the dollar amount. So we want to get that right there directly in the form so everyone knows exactly what to do. All right, let's jump to SharePoint. Here I am in SharePoint Online, and on my homepage I have some quick links to approvals. I'm just going to go to my All Approvals view, and you're going to notice some of the things that I had screenshotted in the PowerPoint that I was just showing. We're going to look at this first from a user perspective. I'm going to walk through some example approvals. And then after, I'm going to show you a little bit about how this is configured using the Ultimate Forms tools. So I'm going to just start right from the beginning. I'm going to do a new approval. Here I am in the approval form. There's the baked-in instructions we were talking about. Notice that it automatically preset the requester to me. I could override if they want to, but streamlining is important. We want to make things simple. So I always like to use food examples. So I'm going to call this the grapes project. And then it wants to know the dollar amount. Okay, so I'm going to say this is for a whole bunch of money. We'll say $80,000. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to show you an example with 4 approvers. What you'll notice is I have a dynamic number of approvers. That changes according to what's in this field. So if I instead was just getting approval for 800, you'll notice that the form is changing immediately real time according to what I selected and according to the business roles that I have for this. So again, I'm going to do the large dollar amount just to demonstrate what would be a full approval, which is 4 approvers in this case. Okay, what else do I need to do? I need to define the approvers. So this could be set dynamically according to rules. In this case, we're going to do it where the requester is actually defining the approvers. So I'm going to fill those in. And in this first one, I'm going to show you the more typical situation. I'm going to put in different names, but what I want to demonstrate to you is the field level security. So I'm going to put in some different people from our organization. What you'll notice is that we have some controls in here. So that's all I fill in. Notice I don't have any approvals or anything like that. It's got the approval history in there. So I would just save that, and that's going to kick off the process. That will auto-generate an email. I'll watch my inbox, and I'll show that to you just as soon as I see that. Right now, it's just saving out that initial information. I think it's slowed up just for a second, just because I'm in the web meeting. Let me try that again. I probably wasn't patient enough. Okay, so we'll say grapes project. Let me fill in the names again. There it goes. My SharePoint environment was running slow for a second. All right, so notice the automatic history tracking. And I have this approval summary. Now this is really important because Normally, I'd be scrolling and scrolling and scrolling to see this information because I've got all these different approver names. You can see that 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, and then I have the approval status 1, 2, 3, 4 columns across there. This is consolidated in this box. This is using some formatting from a tool I'll show you later, and then we have the automatic history tracking. Okay, so let's look at how it's different once I go back into the form. And also, what I do want to demonstrate is, the email chain. So we'll show that in a second, just as soon as I see the email come through. And of course, right as I say that, here it comes. Let me show that to you real quick. This is the auto-generated email notification. So it says approval update, current status. It's getting a ID auto set for it. So I have an auto-generated ID, so APPR.1007 with the notes highlighted, the dollar amount, and then of course this is the very initial request. So nobody's done their approval, there's no notes or anything like that. What's cool about this is I can click on that edit link and it will take me directly right into the form. Now in the interface, what you're going to notice here is some key things. First of all, the dollar amount is locked down because the approval process did begin. And also you'll notice that I cannot edit anything under these approvers because it's not me. I made myself the first approver, and this is the interface that's available only when you are that person. So I can come in here and use the signature field. So I'll put my name in there. Now there's different forms of signatures that you can do. You can just make it a checkbox if you want. You can try that out with the InfoWise signature field, but this is really easy. I can just type in some notes and then I'm going to click approve. You'll see it immediately updates the interface. And when I get back out to the dashboard, you'll notice that it's going to update the history logging as well. Now, one thing I want to tell you about with the tool is the most important thing you can do, of course, is just try out the free demo. If you go into the request a demo, that's to sign up to do a meeting. But if you do the try now for free, you can go in here and install. There's a 30-day trial. It's the full software and it'll let you install and try out exactly what I'm demonstrating today. There is another option if for any reason that's delayed or you're waiting on that. You can actually install or get a free site in our tenant if you're not an admin and you just want to try it out while you're waiting on your admins to install that. So be sure to check that out. Okay, so there's what it did on the update. Notice that my name and approver 1, it's highlighted. It's green. It changed to a green check mark. Notice the history log updated. It says the date and that approver 1 approved. That was Will Cooper. And so it'll just keep updating like that. But the key thing is what I mentioned. There's a control to this in terms of the sequence and the form thing. So I can't go in and approve for Ethan or any of these other people. It's a read-only state. I can see the status of their approval, and if I'm the requester, if I'm getting annoyed or it's taking a long time, one thing I can do is do send reminder. What that's going to do is just trigger that email that we saw again, just to prompt them, hey, you guys, I need that approval. So it'll resend that thing that I did. I can also add notes. So you saw that we have a history log. Maybe the requester or one of the approvers wants to make some notes about what's going on. So I could say checking on budgeting for fiscal year. So I can use this note at the bottom. That's just going to make a little note in addition to these other updates right in the log. So you can see the history log keeps getting appended to you. You may be thinking, well, what's going to happen when that log fills up? Because real estate is always an issue on the list view dashboard. So one thing that's in here is this hover box, and that can grow and grow and grow. So if you notice in this particular one, it's has a max height of 100 pixels. That was set up intentionally, and it means that this thing just can't blow out and have a giant row. But as a user, I can just hover over that and get all that information from the log. So I can do that, or in the list view. So lots of ways to make updates, lots of ways to see what's going on. All right, so let's do one. I'm going to dummy up one where, let's see, let's do hot dog project. I'll do one for less dollar amount. We'll do 8,000. This is for faster approval. And just because I've locked it down with security, I'm going to make myself the approver across the board. Obviously, you wouldn't normally do this, but I'm just doing this so we can demonstrate the full approval process. So in this case, we've got 3 approvers. I'll just make it me, me, and me. And we'll kick off another approval. Oh, and there's the attachment. So typically what you're going to do is attach any kind of documents related to what you want to do. I can just go ahead and, put something on there. So here, I'll put a Excel workbook on there and I can save. And again, every time there's an update in that approval process, it's going to send to the next one in the chain. So notice that the number of approvers is dynamic. Now I've got 3, and that was based on the dollar amount, which is now locked in. So I'm going to go ahead and go in, and we'll just go right down the chain, and we'll do approval, do quick signature, approve. Okay, boom. Really fast, right? So there's the green check mark. So if I'm the requester and I want to know where are we in the approval process, I'm going to know that very quickly. All right, so that's been done. And also notice the enforcement of the sequence. So approver 2 now can get access to his controls to the approval, but notice approver 3, it's not your turn yet. They can't do anything. It's still read only even though I'm the approver because we're not there yet. So this is enforcing the sequence of approval, which is also important. Okay, there's approval 2. There's our history updating for this approval process. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the last approval. This one only needs 3. Now notice what's cool here. The overall status is now changed to complete. So I see the check marks down the board. I'm going to get the email notification update, which is going to demonstrate to me as a requester, I'm going to be notified right at the time this takes place. Here, we'll show you another one of those emails real quick, showing you what it looks like during the approval process. Notice how in this case, we can see that the approvals are done. So as this is working its way through the chain, I can see exactly what's going on. Okay, so that's what we got from a user perspective. Now, once things are complete, we're not necessarily interested in that anymore, and that's why we would have filtered views. So we have some of that set up. So maybe I just need to see the ones that are in the approval process. You can filter down for that. And then later on, if for some reason you need to go and look at the history and see ones that were approved all the way, you can go to the complete view. So that helps you filter things down a little bit. Let's go behind the curtains. Let's look at how this works in the Ultimate Forms tool, because that's the really cool part, that you can set this up and work with this yourself. So I do want to emphasize, when this is available to you later today after my presentation, the way you can get to it is to click on this Install Business Solutions, and then click on the second tab that says InfoWise Webinars. This is the one from last month that I did. This was a safety report system. You're going to see a new tile here for dynamic approvals. It'll be the very first tile in that section. So I did want to mention that so you're ready to go when you want to try this out yourself. So this is Form Designer, and this is how you build dynamic forms with Ultimate Forms. It's right here in SharePoint. It's a drag and drop style interface. I can do things like drag fields right out of the form like I just did, or I can do things like put these fragments on. This is the baked in instructions I was describing. Very simple to work with. I have a visual editor tool. I can just type in whatever instructions I want. I can make any updates and then format that. The styling, I don't even need to use CSS or anything like that. There is a style setting you can use on any control, and you can do that with a visual tool. just for kicks, we'll make this one a different color. I'll make it pink just for the heck of it. And I'll just show you how fast that is. So I said 1 pixel border, black around the side, and now it's pink. You can see when you make the changes, it's real time. So it's very intuitive to work in this interface. And then in these containers, you can define the number of columns. So I can say 1 column, 2 column, 3 columns, so you can kind of see how that works. So a lot of times when you're doing these forms, you do want to have the ability to do a multi-column interface. You can put dynamic information in there. The top here, I have summary information about the approval. And the way I was able to do that is just to reference the fields, which you see in the square brackets. Those are all available to you in this column picker on the bottom, but that lets me create this dynamic form. Now, I have a lot of buttons in the form, you may have noticed, and I can use what's called a action and save. So I can get it to make updates in the form when they click the button. In this case, it needs to update a field that I made at the bottom called approval update, which will set it to yes, and that triggers the email. And then I can do things like update the history log. In this case, I just give it some information on the date information and then add whatever the note is that's in this box right next to it. So it's really convenient and handy how this works. And then this also is where I'm able to enforce all of the security controls and settings. So I have these containers for the approver, and I'll show you as an example how that's all controlled. And this is an example of how we have the dynamic number of approvers. So what this says is if the amount of approvers is not 1, meaning in this case it's 2, 3, or 4, go ahead and show this. And if that's not true, it automatically will just hide that section. Notice I don't have to do it individually in these controls. It's everything inside of that box. The approvers count is set through rules. This is what you saw in the business rules we did here. And the way I was able to do that was quite simple. I just set a rule which controls the amount. I have this as a read-only field, a numeric field, and it just says if the approval amount is less than 1,000, then make this 1. And then I just went right down the line. So the next one was, okay, if it's from 1,000 to 5,000, then it's 2. So in the past, you would have had to do this through programming. You'd have to use JavaScript or use code in ASP.NET or something like this. But you don't have to do that anymore. You can just do it through these drop-down pickers and a visual interface, and it's quite easy to work with. So that's some of the aspects that make the dynamic form. Obviously, you can completely control the look and feel of this however you want. You can lock down fields. For example, the history is something where the user, we don't want them to make changes. In that case, it was very simple. I just said, okay, this is a read-only field. I picked that radio button, and that's all it took to set that up. Along with this were the email notifications. Those are also really easy to work with. That's under the business logic. You would just click on alerts. And I have a very simple setup for this one. I pretty much just use the same content for each one, and we'll take a look at how that works. You work your way across the tabs, and in this case, I have it just set to whoever made the update gets the email. In your live system, of course, you can set it to go to the people in the fields, those being approver 1, approver 2, the requester, and so on. And you just define the condition upon which this goes out. And I said, when the item's modified and approval update is yes, then go ahead and send that email. Once you have your rule, you define a template. I made a template called approvals update. And you can insert dynamic field information into the form. So everything you see in the square brackets, it's referencing fields. And I was able to pull those in by just double clicking on this list of fields on the right side. So I just click add to body, and there you go. It just appends right into the email. Of course, I can tweak and adjust that, do different colors, formatting, make it look however I want to. I can polish that up, and then as I mentioned, you can put in this edit item link, which will make it where the user can click and go directly to the form. So that's how the emails are updated. There's also some color choice fields. Those are used to help make things look a little bit more interesting. It's pretty straightforward. You can approve or decline, and it shows a different icon. You can make whatever selections you want. There's 250 in here. You can just make a choice, and that way you can make the user interface correspond to that, make things look more appealing. So once again, everything I demonstrated in the solution is available to you to try for free. You'll be able to download that later today. Also, this video will be uploaded to YouTube, so you can rewatch that. And as I mentioned, you can do that simply by going to the main settings screen, click on Install Business Solutions, then click on the webinars. It'll be the very first tile. I would recommend you just install it in a new team site in SharePoint, and then you can run this template and you can explore and investigate how it works. Okay, let's go to some questions, then we'll do a drawing for a shirt, and then we can move on to the next part. All right, so let me take a look. See how chatty you guys are today. Not too chatty. Okay, there's a question about having an electronic signature with login and password. The signature is tied to their login and password automatically because it's using their identity of logging into Microsoft 365. So that's implicit. That's automatic. Those are directly tied together. Can you add or remove approvers in a workflow that's been initiated? The way this is designed, no, that would not be the case, and that's intentional because we don't want the approval process to become corrupted, if you will. Basically, that approval chain, the dollar amount, all those things are defined at the beginning. If that was wrong for some reason, that approval should be canceled and restarted, and at that point, you can redefine the approvers however it's needed. Parallel approvals, it's just basically a similar form. It's a more simplified version of what I showed. The way you would do it, you most certainly can do it. I would remove some of the restrictions in this form. So you noticed that I, for example, locked down the field sections based on where it was in the process. I would remove some of those requirements, and that would open up those fields and allow those approvers to do their approval whenever I want. So it certainly can work in both ways. In terms of history logging, you'll be able to investigate that yourself. The way that works in the form is there is the action and save button, and it just appends to that log. So what I would recommend if you're curious about how that works is to go ahead and go download and install the solution from our site, and you can see how these buttons work. I'll just show you that real quick. Here's the history log, and I have some text in here. There are some date time functions to pull out, just the month, day, and year. And then what's going on here is I have a field at the bottom of the form, which is called history, and it just adds whatever that note is to that, so you can check that out yourself. Can you delegate to another approver? Yeah, it should be said, this is a starting point. This is an example solution from which you can adapt and build. These tools are comprehensive, they're dynamic, and you can build anything you want. This is just something that I built as a concept to get you started with your approval process. So everything's possible. This particular example doesn't utilize delegation of approval, but certainly you could adapt and accommodate for that type of process. So it's important to try to think away from what I would call a canned solution, where everything is already preset, because that means it's not flexible. It can't adapt, and you can't make it do what you do in your organization. This is really completely different than that. This is a fully adaptable solution where you can use our platform to make it behave and work according to your own business rules. All right. So let's go ahead and go to the shirt drawing. What I'm looking for is a number between 1 and 100. This is for people in the United States. And if you get close to my number, you're going to get a shirt mailed to you. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds, and I'm going to pick the number who's closest, and then we'll move on to the next part. while we're doing that, just a reminder, if you have questions, if there's a specific approval project that you need to do, if you want to have a one-on-one conversation with us so we can have a conversation about that, what you should do is just go to the InfoWise site and click Request a Demo. If you put your info in, we'll schedule a web meeting and we'll have a discussion and we'll talk about that and help you know what to do with your next steps. All right, we've got a winner. Somebody got real close to my number, and that is Denise Heather. Denise, if you can, send me an email. My email is willc@infowisesolutions.com. That's WILLC at infowisesolutions.com. I need your shirt size and I need a mailing address, and I'll get it out to you today. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go on to the next part, which is about SharePoint Dashboards. This is a companion tool if you want. This is something that you can use in addition to Ultimate Forms. This is a way to create visually appealing dashboards and controls inside of your SharePoint Online environment. And in fact, in the template that I demonstrate today, it utilizes some of these tools, and I'm going to show you exactly how that works. When you go to the SharePoint Dashboards site, you're going to see all kinds of examples in the gallery of different things that you can do with your SharePoint views. Different charts and visualizations, buttons, controls, all kinds of different things that you can add in your SharePoint environment to make it more interactive and more visually appealing. As the name of the site goes, this is all about making really nice dashboards in SharePoint. Like the Ultimate Forms tool, you can try this for free. In fact, there are 20 templates in here that you can use when you do the free sign up. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. And then additional to that is another 56 templates, which are referred to as the Pro templates. And that includes a lot of advanced functionality and different things you can do. So you can start out trying this, and then if you want to later pursue getting the full set. Let's look at how this applies to the solution we were looking at today. In fact, 3 of the columns are utilizing controls that are from that platform. The first one is the one I use more often than any other formatting template there is, and that's the edit button. SharePoint Online doesn't have an edit button. This lets you fill in that gap. Any of you guys who used to use old SharePoint probably like the option to have an edit button, and this lets you have that capability. That's a free template. You can just go in here, and if you go to the buttons section, you're going to notice it's the very first one. Not the very first one, it's the 4th one, button edit right there. Just to explain a little bit about how this works, like Ultimate Forms, you don't have to do any code or anything like that. Here, let me get logged in. Again, this is a free one. You can control through these drop downs. I can control the size. I can pick different icons. Maybe I want to do a different looking icon for that. I just changed it to a different icon. You can choose whatever color. All this is dynamic and configurable. I can control how it looks when I hover. Maybe I want that to look blue instead when I hover. I just use these drop-down configurations to make it look however I want to. And yeah, I have a question on that. Yes, Jim, this is for SharePoint Online only. Some of these will work for on-premise SharePoint 2019. Most of the templates will work only in SharePoint Online. That has to do with some restrictions and limitations with the formatting for Microsoft. Good question. Okay, so I can control the color, and then maybe I want a curved border or not, but basically you can get this to look however you want. And then once you have what you want, you just copy, and then I can come over here and I just go to the column settings, format this column, and paste. You'll see it update immediately. And the thing that's cool about this is you can make it look however you want. That's one of the templates. We had two other templates that are in here. This history is actually a multi-line text field. That may look like a rich text field to you because it's formatted, but in fact, it's just regular multi-line text. And then we have this dynamic approval chain. So we'll go ahead and look at those templates as well. So I just go back here to my gallery dashboard. I'm going to do a search for multi-line text. There it is. And I have some options here. So the issue with these large multi-line text field is I have limited real estate in SharePoint, so it tends to overflow. I can't just have something going on and on forever. And this lets you deal with that in a couple of different ways. I can either have scrolling, which of course that's not how SharePoint works out of the box, or I can have a hover where I hover over it, which is what we saw in the demonstration. I can do things like change the background color. Maybe I want it to be light yellow, something like that. Maybe I want the border color to change. All of those things are configurable. So I can just select the options I want, and then I just like the other one, I copy that over and I can apply it to the SharePoint environment. So this was done on the history tracking. So I just go to format this column, and you see all this ugly, nasty code. That's what you don't have to do. That's what the tool does for you. All you ever have to do is copy and paste. And you'll see it has the formatting option that I just selected. Okay, and then we have this approvals one. So this is the dynamic approvals chain. So we'll just take a look at that template next. Now those formatting templates are baked in, the static version of them, and the template for dynamic approvals that I just showed you. The dynamic tool is here. So let me do a search for approval. There's approval summary. And this is the one we were just looking at. Whenever you're in these templates, you can try looking at the different themes. All the themes are different presets of settings that have a different look and feel. It gives you ideas on different possibilities of things that you can make. So if I like thumbs, for example, and I wanted a courier, I can really have this look however I want it to look. So if I copy that over, I can change this to whatever different look I set up. So I do format this column, copy and paste. Okay, there we go. Now we got the thumbs going on instead, and then it'll give me a thumbs down if it wasn't. So it's completely and totally in your control. So again, really the most important thing that I would emphasize is to just go ahead and take advantage of what's free. So to get that, you can just go to the light sign up. All you got to do is stick in your email, and that will let you use a lot of things that are very useful, and it'll help you get familiar with the tool and how it works. So you can just go into that form, you get your own login, and then especially there's a lot of buttons available to you. There are buttons for edit, view form. You can do things like have a edit for date time. You can browse through here and you can see there's lots of useful options available to you, which you can start taking advantage of right away. Here's a really cool one. You can do a toggle button. So if you have a yes, no field, you can have it where you can click directly in the SharePoint interface and let your users update that. So lots of cool options for you to take advantage of right away and let you explore the product. What's really cool is that you can check out the stuff that are professional templates even before you make the decision, and you can see just exactly how they work. So for example, if you're curious about a charting example, or we have a calendar example or things like that, you can come in here, and even though I don't have a login, I don't get the code, I can do things like adjust these controls. I can look at the different presets, and basically I can see exactly how this is going to look, in terms of kind of seeing what the product does and seeing what the different possibilities are. So that's a really nice thing that you have, is you don't have to kind of do that sight unseen, so to speak. You can do things like set up gradient filters on these backgrounds. That's really cool. All kinds of different options there. One that I added quite recently is is a calendar template. I know that that's something that's important to a lot of people, and this lets you build a calendar that has custom icons and custom day formatting to do things like highlight weekends or the current day or things like that. So there's lots and lots and lots of different templates that you can explore. And in all cases, all it requires is for you to pick some settings until you make it look however you want. And then at that point, you can just copy and paste into the SharePoint interface to get exactly what you want. If you have questions about that, you can use the contact form on that site or set up a meeting with us if you like. And then additionally, we post videos, which is on our SharePoint Smart site. So you can get more information about any changes, new things that have come out, and see those new videos. I have a couple of videos on a flowchart building tool, which is a new template, and then also another new kind of chart, which is the proportional area diagram. One thing that's really great about this for the professional license, you only need the license for the person building the templates. So as a comparison, for example, with Power BI, it's extremely expensive in that you have to buy a pro license for not only the users who are building dashboards, but for anybody who is even going to view a dashboard. This does not work like that. If you get this, you only need to buy a single license for each person who is building out templates. So it's quite attainable and really just a fraction of what you would pay for another BI alternative. So if you find that interesting, there's tons of videos about it. If you want a more in-depth demonstration about it, there's a video there, or you can go into the SharePoint site and check out all those different videos there. That's pretty much what I wanted to tell you about SharePoint Dashboards today. I hope you check that out. I will hang out and chat, and I'm going to answer any additional questions about any of the presentation today. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but I will go ahead and stay on to answer additional questions.